Welcome to the Intern Academy Gradcast. It's the culmination and continuation of decades of ministry being poured into each new generation. Listen in to intern graduates from all generations and learn what it really means to be a part of this pipeline of leadership that is changing the world one internship at a time.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back. Interns, IA grads, coaches, and everyone in between. We're so glad that you decided to join us again tonight for a wonderful interview from an IA grad, as is the tradition on the Gradcast. We have with us the one, the only Jenna Vance-Martin. Jenna, we're very glad to have you tonight.
Yeah, for having me.
Awesome. So, but as usual, I'm joined by the usual band of misfits: Abby, Kaylee, Nate, Big Nate to be exact. How are you guys doing? Abby?
Doing good. Excited to be filming with you guys. And yeah, I'm excited for tonight.
Good stuff. Kaylee, how are you?
Doing well. I'm excited to be here hanging out with y'all. So let's get it.
Awesome. Big Nate, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? Doing well. Good to see you guys again. Glad to be back.
Good stuff. Alrighty, folks. We are going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to all of our hearts because we are all considered, I guess, IA grads, as one might call it, here in the IA family. So instead of our usual cheesy icebreaker question, we're going to jump right into the thick of things. We're going to go straight to the meat and potatoes of tonight's discussion, because we're going to be talking about tonight healthy transitions from internships back to what one might call normal life, your home church, your home state, what have you. So we're going to start tonight by sharing a little bit about our own personal experiences, and then we're going to hear from Miss Jenna, and then we're going to launch some very heavy, hard-hitting questions her way. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Sweet. So I guess we'll do ladies first. Abby and Kaylee, tell us a little bit about your experience transitioning.
Kaylee, you go.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
shoot. I was about to. Okay. All right. Yeah. So for me, it's funny for me because that first month I was in Indiana, I was like kind of lonely and I struggled a lot because everyone at the church I was getting to know, they were going home to their families and I was just like going home to a Midwestern basement is what I call it because basements are a big deal in Indiana. So they would make this home for me and I would go to it and I didn't have to go upstairs and kind of meet with my host family. And I found myself just like really lonely. And then we had VBX is what they call it at County Line. And then we had a mission trip and things just started changing and I started connecting with kids and I started connecting with the staff and my host family more and more. And I bonded so heavily with them. And so when I left, I was heartbroken. I was truly like, I shed a tear and I'm not a crier. And I passed their house and I was like, gosh, this is an awful feeling. But it's so beautiful to have something that was so awesome to say goodbye to. But it took me a few weeks to feel normal back at MacU again. And I truly felt like I matured like 3 years in 3 months. And the Lord taught me so much and gave me such like godly people and like such a great picture of what Christians looked like in Indiana and up like northern Indiana. I never thought I'd ever be there. And so, yeah, that's a little tidbit, but it was hard. At first I was like ready to go home. And then at the end I was like, oh, can I stay a little bit longer? So, yeah, a lot more to it, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
Extremely relatable.
It's tough. Yeah.
And then you went back for a second year.
I
Or
did.
was
I
that the
asked.
yeah.
Yeah, I went again and I was like, please take me back. And
Aw.
I love coming back to Oklahoma, but like I could always stay a little longer, I feel like when I do leave. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
so sweet.
yeah, it was sweet. It was good. So
For me, kind of the same like you, Kaylee, like towards the end, I was like, I'm ready to go back to Oklahoma. And then the week of came and I was like, oh no. And then it was like,
Mhm.
okay, this Sunday morning, all students, like, we're gonna say goodbye to our interns. They're leaving this week. And then that's when it like hit the reality, and I was not okay. I was like, oh no. So I just, I had such an incredible summer. Like those students at McDowell, oh my gosh. And working for Chip and Sarah and just with the other interns, it was so special and so sweet. And so it, like you said, I felt like I matured like 3 years and 3 months, seriously. And just like,
Mhm.
you feel like family when you just come into your internship with everyone. So yeah, it was really hard. I was telling Charles and Kaylee earlier that so on the way home, my two of my best friends flew out and then they drove home with me from Arizona, and it was like a 13-hour drive. And I was down bad. I was really sad. And I was like, what is life now? I don't know what to do. And so we were when I was walking in the door back to my parents' house, I'm like crying my eyes out. And there's a video of my parents like yelling, "Welcome home," and like throwing confetti on me, and I'm sobbing. And I like walk in and I'm like,
Oh
like
no.
trying to keep like a smile, and I'm like, oh guys, this is so awkward. So, um, all that to say, yeah, it took me a couple weeks. I'm going on and on. I could talk more about this, but yeah, it was hard. And I was like, what is normal life? It was crazy how much could
Mhm.
change in 3 months. So,
Yeah.
That's deep. Big Nate, tell us a little bit about your experience there, buddy.
Yeah, so my 3 months over in Safety Harbor, Florida was um probably some of the best months of my life. Just being
Yeah.
around other interns and being around students and being around kids, watching a VBS now, which is I'll connect that in about 30 seconds. But just being around kids, being around students, getting to know people, forming relationships, it was just the coolest thing. But the transition back home, um, I didn't know that my transition back home would last about 2.5 weeks, and then I'd be moving
Mhm.
nine hours away to another state for a job. So my transition was very different, because I thought I was just going to go home and move to college 45 minutes away, and then do that for another 4 months and come back home. That was not the case at all. So my transition was a lot more out there and a lot of different than I thought it was going to be. And so when I got to North Carolina, I was like, how did I get here? Um,
Mm.
I was driving
That's right.
across the border and I just see the sign and I'm going, I don't even know what I'm doing. But I knew it was on faith, and that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But just the transition was it was weird. But I knew that it was God sent, and I knew He was going to help me through it.
That's awesome. Uh, Nate, one thing that's really cool, I think, if for those people who are actively seeking the will of God, like it seems like the three of you were,
Yeah.
and of course, I assume Jenna, um, is that sometimes I think we all can find ourselves asking, like, dude, how am I here? Because sometimes it's like God just has like led us there way better than we could wherever we went for His will, way better than we could have ever planned for ourselves. And that was certainly a
Absolutely.
relatable story for myself and my wife. I think we talked a little bit about on the last episode about our experience going to Ohio because we interned at Salem Church of God there in Dayton. It was kind of miserable. We got into a bad wreck after we left intern academy in Kentucky our first summer. We survived, but my truck did not. Then I caught COVID. My wife and I both did from our host family. So that was a really awesome experience. Uh, so the transition into it was a little rough. I'd never really left the state before. I'd never really thought I would ever see myself outside the great state of Florida. Um, yet that's where I ended up. And not only is that where I ended up, that's where I, I, it was a weird feeling. Like after the summer, we were both exhausted and ready to come home, but we were also like, if somebody from this family was like, we will adopt you both forever, and we will take you in, and we will hire you as janitors, as security, as chefs or somebody, anything. We would stay in a heartbeat. And then, like Kaylee, we actually went back for a second summer, and we didn't annoy the folks at Salem enough, so they asked us to come back. So we'll be going back for a 2-year summer residency. But none of that would have been possible if we didn't take the first step of faith, trusting God with the people that were going to be looking out for us, the people who were going to be mentoring us and discipling us. It was a huge leap of faith, but we did it, and we're better off for it, as is often the case. But this isn't about us, right? Although I do have to say really quickly, this is going to be a shameless shout out to Salem Church of God. Not only do we have a former resident on the Zoom right now, we have a future resident. And if you guys recall, Trevor Moody was on a couple episodes. So all I'm going to say is Salem's doing something right. I'll leave it there. But anyways,
All right.
this show isn't about us. We don't have enough viewers to talk for 4 hours about our personal experiences. We're here to hear from Jenna. So Jenna, if you don't mind, tell us and the audience who you are, your time at Salem, and what was that initial transition like for you?
Yeah. So my name is Jenna Vance-Martin. I currently live in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I serve at a church in Lexington, Massachusetts called Grace Chapel, where I serve as the middle school director for our Lexington campus. And I was a 1.5 year long resident for Nathaniel Lyon at the good old Salem Church of God. And honestly, doing a residency wasn't something that was even on my radar. I went to school for Christian education, and I really wanted to be a camp director because I didn't want to have to preach. But then I never got any camp jobs, and no matter how much I was like applying and stuff at school, like nothing was happening. And so out of the blue one day, Nathaniel Lane, he texts me and he's like, "Hey, I got this residency thing. You want to do it?" And I was like, "I got nothing else, so I guess that's what I'll do." And so I ended up it was supposed to be just a 1-year-long residency, but even throughout then I was like, "Nah, I'm not going to be a pastor. I'm not going to be a pastor." And I was trying to not find pastor jobs. And then I wasn't finding any other jobs. And so then I got on my hands and knees for Nathaniel, and I was like, please can extend my residency. Don't send me away yet. So we extended it by another summer. And so my transition was a little bit different because I wasn't just going back home or going back to school or anything like that, because Salem is my home church. It's pretty much where I grew up. So coming to Salem for my residency already kind of felt like coming home. So my transition was, I eventually caved and realized that God was calling me to be a pastor. And I started looking for pastoral jobs, and I got one in Indiana, in good old Kokomo, Indiana, where I was going to be a worship and youth pastor for South Creek Church of God. And my transition was so strange because I would be working at Salem during the week. We were in like our summer programming. We were doing the race, all of these things. And then on the weekends, I would drive to Indiana and lead worship and then do student ministry that night. And so for the entire month of August, I was like driving back and forth, which first bit of advice, don't do that. Give yourself time.
Like from Florida to Indiana.
Oh,
No. Kokomo, Indiana to Ohio. Different Kokomo. Very different.
Still. Man.
Yeah, so I mean, it was about like a 2.5 hour drive between Dayton and Kokomo, Indiana. And it was kind of exhausting. Don't recommend that. That doesn't set yourself up for success. And then we eventually like fully moved out to Indiana, and then I was instantly like already in my job. So I really wish I had given myself more time for like my residency to end, and then a bit of time to just like rest and like chill for a bit and like really prepare before diving into something new. Wouldn't recommend doing that. But hey, we made it. I was young. I was like 22, 23. So I was like, whatever, I can do it. I don't know that I would recommend that. Yeah, it was a lot.
That's pretty sound advice, Jenna. So
don't do what I did.
There you go. Well, I think Kaylee's got the first question that we're going to field your way.
Yeah. And I mean, your situation's a little bit unique and a little bit different from ours that we shared, but like, what would you say in the midst of all the chaos that you were kind of going back and forth? What was like the most difficult thing about your transition? And even like with you now in Massachusetts, where is like the difficulties lying in those transitions and those changes happening?
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me moving to Indiana was um just like being away from like my friends and family. Like Indiana was still kind of in the middle of all of our friends. Like my husband's family's from Michigan. We had friends in Illinois,
Mhm.
like my family's in Ohio, but it was still far enough away that I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm all alone. And yeah, there was definitely like a lot of loneliness for probably the first couple of months that we were there. And then COVID hit while we were there, which made it even worse. Um, so, that was pretty difficult. And then honestly, same thing, even moving out here to Massachusetts. I mean, we moved halfway across the country and knew absolutely no one. And
Yeah.
we felt so good about our church and like just this area and like, the job that I was going to be doing. And the only thing that was holding us back was like, I'm going to be so like literally across the country, like not just a 2 hour drive, but like a 10 to 14 hour drive, like away from our
Mhm.
family back in the Midwest. But like what I've seen in, both of, my experiences in Indiana and then even here in Massachusetts is like God will just always like provide community for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go looking for it a little bit more. In Indiana, we definitely had to go looking for it.
Mhm.
But here in Massachusetts, I get to like work with people who are some of my best friends, and they live like 5 minutes away from me, and that has just been like very encouraging. So it's really difficult at first, but then like once you find that community and that place of belonging, it makes it so much better.
That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
Jenna,
Wow.
I'm curious. I think um, there's one common theme that I think we all had in our little pre-film discussion, which was how different like we felt going back. Again, your story is a little bit different. Like when you went back, I mean, you were kind of already in your home church, but after your residency, what were some of the like just the differences within like your spirituality, like how you viewed God's faithfulness, like your maturity, like were there, I'm assuming there were noticeable differences. Could you tell us a little bit more about like what that was like when you had time to
Yeah.
self-reflect?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things was like my own self-confidence. I had
Mm.
had some past like issues like when I was in high school, like about like, oh, women being leaders in the church. And so I'd kind of had this kind of wrong lie, I guess, that I believed about myself. It was just like, oh, but I can't be a pastor. And I think working with Nathaniel and being a resident like really just made me have more confidence in myself and just be like, no, this actually is what God called me to be. And I am just believing these other lies and things like that. Um, so it helped me to realize that yes, God's calling for my life was actually to be a pastor. And so I'm so thankful for Nathaniel for that. And then are you guys like familiar with the Enneagram and all that stuff?
Oh, yes.
A little
Okay.
bit. Yeah.
I am like the most sevens of sevens. And so one thing that I always struggled with was having hard conversations and like if something was wrong or if there was an issue, like being able to actually go to that person and talk to them about it. And Nathaniel forced me to do that so many times and really got me out of my comfort zone. And I still remember there was this one time after Ohio State Youth Convention where I like sat in his office and I was just like, I have something I need to talk to you
Oh
about.
no.
And I'd like taken notes on my phone and he was just sitting there
Oh.
listening to me as I was like sharing this. And it has been so helpful because like you have to have so many uncomfortable and like difficult conversations like all the time in ministry. And I still hate them like with a passion and I don't enjoy them.
Sure.
But again, just kind of helping like
Amen.
build my confidence in myself as just in my communication, in my leadership, and things like that. So I think yeah, like looking at me from like the beginning of my residency, I felt like I was very like timid and kind of shy. And it took me and Nathaniel probably like 6 months to like figure out how we work together. Because if you know Nathaniel, he's very much like, woo, like he's a loud, like up in front kind of guy. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, once we figured it out and like figured out how we work together, like he was able to help me like so much and help me to grow. So, and that's stuff that I'm still using even today, whatever, how many years later, like 4 years later.
Well,
4 years.
Jenna, that was my next question was obviously when you went to your residency, it was still home for you, but like, how did your relationship change with the people that you were with and that you already knew? So you kind of shared how that was like with Nathaniel. Can you speak into that a bit more with just other people?
Yeah. Yeah, so with Nathaniel too, it was interesting. He became the youth pastor at Salem my senior year of high school. So I technically had him for a year as a youth
Oh.
pastor. And then he really helped me throughout college when I would be coming back and stuff. He would invite me to come back during the summers and be like, hey, why don't you help me out with the race? Or hey, whatever. And I think that's why he ended up asking me to be a resident. But I think just in general, I just got to know more people on staff. So like, I don't know, like Pastor Steve, like he'd always just been this guy up on stage, and now it's like, oh, we're in meetings together now. Like, this is kind of
Yeah.
weird. Like, you've been preaching for the last like 4 years, and I've been coming, and now like we're coworkers. Like, it was definitely a little bit weird, but everyone at Salem was just like so kind, and so like welcoming, and so it didn't really feel that like weird. Like, I don't feel like people looked at me and saw like, oh, teenage high school Jenna. Like, when I came on staff, I felt like they were really good at treating me as like a coworker and like, somebody to collaborate with, which I was really appreciative of. But yeah, and then like with my mom, I don't know, my parents were still there too. I think they enjoyed like seeing me around more
Yeah.
often and stuff, and seeing me in service, and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, yeah, I didn't feel like that out of place or that different, which I know it's not everybody experience like coming in, but Salem's just a special place. What can I say?
Yeah. No, well,
cool.
and so what would you say to those? Because there's gonna be a lot of grads that are about to be going into internships and residencies like this month. It's May.
Yeah.
So what would you say to them? What, like, a piece of advice you'd give when it comes to just the people they're with, if they're in a new place, or even if it's home for them, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say meet with as many people as you possibly can, like within the first couple weeks. It can be really easy to jump into just like, I'm gonna plan stuff and I'm gonna do stuff so I can like prove my worth and show how valuable I am to this team. But like, view it more as like a learning opportunity rather than like, oh, I need to prove myself. So like, meet with your senior pastor, meet with whoever your supervisor is, meet with like parents or people in the congregation, or things like that. Like, it made me even make like the first couple weeks of it just having meetings, getting to know the culture of the church where you're at. Even if it is your home church, being on staff is very different than like going to your church. Like, there's a whole lot of behind the scenes nuances and things like that. So like, fill up your schedule the first couple weeks with like meeting as many people as possible, just so you can kind of hear the story of the church. That's what I would recommend. I didn't always
awesome.
do that.
That's good
Again,
advice. Yeah.
don't do as I do. I am also very much a person who's just like, I'm gonna dive in and I'm gonna start getting stuff done, and then I'm like, oh wait, I need to meet people. That's like the most important thing.
Love it.
Again, some more sound advice, Jenna. A quick story about an experience I had trying to do that. I made a point to tell myself to never say no when somebody asked me to do something or participate in a new way that was out of my comfort zone. And one such example of this was when we started at Salem, they were in between worship pastors. So they asked to do this thing where they did like, they didn't have a choir, they had a band, but they wanted to do this thing called a worship squad. So they had like 6 people on the back of the stage, like just kind of clapping and like singing along to the song. So I do not sing. I do not go on stage very often to just awkwardly stand, smile, and clap and enjoy worship. I'd much rather enjoy worship in the pews. So I said, yeah, I'd love to do that when they asked me to do it. And I thought I did a great job. I thought I was smiling. I thought I was clapping. Man, I was like, dude, people are going to be so impressed that I stepped out of my comfort zone. And all I got were comments of, man, did they force you to do that? Like, somebody walked up to my wife and was like, did you force your husband to go on stage this morning?
Oh, no.
But after that experience, I did tell myself, okay, there are going to be some experiences where I start to rein in what I'm going to say yes to. But I wonder if we could really quickly, do any of you guys have some more advice that you would give to interns and residents that are going to be starting up soon? my co-hosts, do you guys have any advice that you would share? Abby, Kaylee, anything?
I love what Jenna said. Because if I like heard that before I went to what I did, I would have, I think, been a lot, or it would have expedited the joy, I think, a little bit. Because I did struggle those few weeks alone and calling my friends and just ready to go home. But it's because I wasn't building those relationships yet. And then like going upstairs and being like meeting with my host family because they were willing to pour into me, but I was just kind of being a little shy. So like not holding back and just spending time getting to know people is key. I truly believe. So
Yeah, I mean, what you guys said, I think the biggest thing, which I have been horrible at as time goes on, is connect and keep connecting with the people that you meet after internship is over, because those are supposed to be lifelong connections that you've made, and they are. But it can be so easy to just not reach out, and people get busy. But I promise you, like, doesn't matter how long it's been, just reach out. Like, you want to catch up with them. It is the most sweet thing in the world, and I think there's nothing more priceless than that. So that's what I'd say.
Good stuff.
yeah.
Big Nate?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the idea of lifelong connections. And I think that requires investment on our parts. We
Yeah.
can be connected with people and we can talk to them while we're there, and then it's up to us after we leave to reach out. That person might reach out a couple of times and check on you, but that relationship is what you make out of it, of what it's going to be. And
Yep.
so, I was always the person for our internship. I was annoying them probably, but I would just text them and be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing tonight? Are you guys free? Do you guys want to go do this? Do you want to go out? Do you want to do this? How about we go to the movies? How about we go to the beach? Because we're in Florida." And I'm sure they got sick of me, and might have blocked my number by the end of the summer. Um, but it was still really cool to know that I was the one, and I really invested in a lot of relationships there. And the other interns I was with, we still talk today.
That's
So
awesome.
it's so pretty cool to have those relationships, and also have those mentors too for coaches and just different things like
Yeah.
that. But I think those relationships are what we make of them.
That's great stuff. Nate, to just piggyback off of that, and what Jenna had to say as well earlier about those investing in relationship type moments that you have with people. Just like having coffee or having like serious conversations over the dinner table with your host family, or getting to know some of the leadership at the church that you're interning at or doing a residency at, not just the leadership on staff that you work with Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday, but the board members, the elders,
Yeah.
the deacons, what have you, the leadership that's integral to your church. And then, spruce it up a little bit with some people who are completely outside the interworkings of the church and get to know their perspective of things. That is a great sound advice. And I think the Holy Spirit can sometimes work in people with the worst attitudes and still drag them through an experience, and with the transformative power that only the Holy Spirit has, can make them into a different individual. But a lot of times it's you get what you pour into is what you get out of the situation. So if you decide to make it an intentional, let's meet with people, you'll get out of that benefits that you could be reaping for the next decades in your ministry. So all great advice. Jenna, we're going to transition a little bit to landing the plane somewhat. So I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that there is a right way to kind of leave an internship or a residency. There's a right way to do that. That's an ideal that not a lot of us can reach or have reached, or, you mentioned a little bit about your experience of you wish you may have rested a little bit before starting this new position. But I wonder if you could tell us some more advice about how to kind of make that transition as smooth as possible. So I wonder if you could speak into that some more for us.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a party before you leave. No, I mean you can if you want to. I loved Nathaniel and his wife Kimmy and their family so much, and they were so kind and like threw a little going away thing for me when I first left. And yeah, same made me cry. It was horrible and wonderful at the same time. But yeah, when it comes to oh gosh, yeah, actually making like a smooth transition. Yes, as I said earlier, definitely making sure that you take time to rest in between jobs. And then one thing that I found that I didn't do well is that going into my first job, I set I don't know, just really like kind of hard and fast expectations of myself for myself. Like it's definitely good to go into a new position or new job with some goals in mind of what you want to do. But as somebody who's in like student ministry, like one thing that we hear all the time is like, oh, the average lifespan of a youth pastor is only 2 years. That's horrible. And so like I'd gone into my first job being like, I'm not going to be part of that statistic. I'm going to be here forever type thing. And then I feel like when it came time for me to then, leave my position in Kokomo and then come here, it was only about 2 years. And I remember feeling like such a failure and feeling like I have done something wrong because of this. And I think I stayed longer than I necessarily should have because I was trying to like fight this expectation that I had put on myself. The Lord had not put that on me. Like God was very clearly calling me to something else at that time. But because of like this kind of unrealistic, I don't even know if it's necessarily unrealistic expectation, but I think you should definitely go into a new whatever it is after your internship with some sort of a goal, but also like don't hold on to it so like tightly that it like becomes your identity. And then if it doesn't happen, especially if that's God's will that it doesn't happen, that way like you don't end up feeling like, oh, I've just failed in this position, or I failed as a youth pastor, or whatever it may be. So yeah, just I don't know, be a bit like gracious with yourself when it comes to, going into something new. And then one thing that helped me as I was going into my new position was just always being like in a posture of learning. And I know that looks very different for other people. Like I don't like reading nonfiction books. But for me, like I love going to conferences. And so like that's one of the things I did my first year was I actually went down to a church down in Florida called Christ Fellowship. They put on this big conference, and like that was like where I was able to learn and like get passionate and like have all these ideas and figure out like ways that I could bring them into my new thing. So however that like looks for you, but yeah, always be like in a posture of learning. But then, yeah, but also like don't hold on too tightly and be willing to just like let the Lord and the Spirit move in your life. Even if you might feel like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm leaving too soon, or whatever it may be. I know under everybody's stories is like a little bit different, but at least from my experience, those are some things that I did good and not so good.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, both are worthy of sharing, and we can learn from both sets of experiences. So thank you so much for sharing. Big Nate?
Yeah, so speaking of experiences and just how we mentioned how yours is a little different compared to some other experiences, and I think all of our experiences are different in that way. So through this experience, what would you say is the biggest lesson that the Lord taught you?
Like through my residency or through like the transition, or what experience?
Just in general.
Just in general. Oh gosh. Kind of as I said earlier, I think the Lord just reaffirming like my call into ministry. We kind of talked about that earlier of just like, I don't know, the imposter syndrome of feeling like I don't belong here.
Yeah.
I still feel that today, and I've been in full-time ministry for 6 years going on 7 years now. So yeah, just having that like reaffirmation constantly, like wherever I go, I feel like the Lord has been showing me like, see, nope, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, that's been so great for me. And then just the communities that I've gotten to know at all the different places that I've been to, there is something so special to me when it comes to just like a faith-filled community. I've found that those friendships are the ones that last longer and will, my friends from Salem are the ones who've flown out to Massachusetts to come visit me. And when we lived in Indiana, we had like people from Salem over like all the time. And so I just cherish those friendships so much. Yeah, I'll shout out Trevor Moody, my friend. We still play video games like online. every now and then. And so they're just so like important people in my life. And like Nathaniel very much as well. Like we still talk, every once in a while we'll like Zoom and like check in. And so like I still feel like he's my mentor, even though like we're no longer serving together, we're no longer at Salem, things like that. So I'm just so blessed by like the relationships and the friendships that I made throughout my time during at Salem. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, that I think that's what everybody wants to hear, coming out of an experience, like a residency or an internship. Jenna, thank you so much for sharing. We're very blessed to have you join us here tonight, and it's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
But I'd like to ask my co-hosts if I can, give us like a 30-second takeaway of what Ms. Jenna had to share with us tonight. What was something you took away from tonight's discussion that our viewers should have highlighted?
Well, one thing I noted that you said was just kind of like when we were talking about community and like the fear of maybe not finding it, but like how the Lord will provide it. And sometimes it takes a little more effort on our part to go find it, and sometimes it takes time. And in my case, it took a little time and one shift and a VBX experience, and I felt like the ball started rolling. So yeah, the Lord will provide in those ways where we need it, and I definitely did need it. So yeah, that was the cool thing I took note of.
Yeah, I think for me, it was also the community, like Kaylee was just talking about, but also whenever you go into, your first role, like you're in full-time ministry or whatever ministry you end up in, whether it's in the church or not having expectations on yourself that, you know, might change, or like the Lord's plan might be different, and that's okay, and to lean into that and to not be so like, well, no, this is what I set for myself, and feeling like, if things change or the Lord calls you somewhere else and it's not in the time frame that you set, then like something's wrong with that. Like, no, the Lord's plan changes, or the Lord's plan differs from ours and can change, and like that's okay. And it's good to lean into that. And I think more often than not that happens, and it's easy for us to just kind of lean into what we know and not surrendering that in that season of transition. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I think for me it's kind of about that as well. As somebody who just jumped into full-time ministry 8 months ago, which is crazy, longest and shortest 8 months of my life. But I think jumping in, I jumped in with the expectation that I was gonna double the attendance of our kids in the first 6 months, and very safe to say that did not happen. Um, and the reason it didn't happen was because I didn't get 100% control because I've never done kids ministry before. So when I jumped in, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna take you under our wing and really walk you through this." And I'm sitting there going, "I'm ready now. Let's do it." And I wasn't. And so I'm glad somebody realized that. But it's just the idea that if we're jumping into full-time ministry, that the only expectation that we can have is that the Lord's will is going to be done. And whatever that looks like, we should be okay with that because we do know that is what's best. So it was just kind of cool to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, great stuff. I think one thing, Jenna, that I think through our discussion tonight with you and the co-host here, was an affirmation of a practice that I heard, that was advice given to me. I think it was my sophomore year of college, and it was find your mentors, hold on to them, and learn as much as you can from them. And it sounds like you got to do that with Pastor Nathaniel. And I think through IA, it really presents a good opportunity for students and grads to really, really be able to do that. So that way they can provide some extra accountability, like Nathan just shared with us tonight about, somebody just kind of walking you through the process of learning how to do ministry. Because it's not something that you can always so easily just wing it. That's not really something that happens very successfully very often. It does happen through the grace of the Holy Spirit, but not often is my observation. But anyways, that's some takeaways for tonight. Jenna, thank you again so much for joining us
Mhm.
tonight. We're
Mm.
blessed by your company and this wonderful discussion. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much. It was so great to meet you all.
Yeah, this was so
Yes, nice
good.
meeting
thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Alrighty. IA grads, interns, and coaches, and everybody else. We're so glad you joined us tonight to hear some wise words from another amazing grad. And we hope that you'll tune in soon, very soon, to hear from another wonderful grad that has gone through our intern academy. And anyways, we look forward to seeing you then. Until then, take care. We'll see you guys.